Hello children, welcome back to our political science class. In our two previous videos, we have dealt with the Bill of Rights, fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution, a short summary, and in detail we have done the right to equality and right to freedom. Today in our video, we are going to deal with the other four rights, that is the right against exploitation, right to freedom of religion, cultural and educational rights, and right to constitutional remedies. Besides this, we are also going to deal with the fundamental duties as well as the directive principles of the state policy. But before this, we are going to see the difference between the ordinary rights and fundamental rights. See children, ordinary rights are those rights which are protected and enforced by ordinary law. Legislature makes the laws by ordinary process where the bill is passed by simple majority. And if in case we want any changes to be made in that particular law or bill, it again requires the procedure of simple majority to favor it and to pass it. Like for example, if there is any senior citizen, after his retirement, he is destined to get a pension of 5,000 rupees per month. Now, this is not his fundamental right because it is not necessary that each and every citizen, senior citizen of the country, need to get 5,000 rupees as his pension. This comes in the category of ordinary right. Now, if in case he want any kind of changes to be done, he need not go to the parliament, but initially he needs to approach to the lower court. After that, he can further go and approach the Supreme Court. Contrary to this, the fundamental rights are very important rights for every citizen of the country. They are protected and guaranteed by the Constitution. Our Constitution basically lists the 6 fundamental rights which can be amended only when the Constitution is amended. That means if in case there is any change in the Constitution, then only there can be any change in the fundamental rights. Otherwise, this cannot be done in the way how we can make any changes in the ordinary rights. Judiciary has a responsibility to protect the fundamental rights from being violated. Supreme Court has been granted the special power of protecting the fundamental rights. So, if there is any individual whose fundamental rights have been violated, then he can directly approach the Supreme Court, which was not the case in the ordinary rights. In the ordinary rights, if a person wants to approach, he can approach first in the lower court and then in the Supreme Court. But here in the case of fundamental rights, if any of the person's fundamental rights have been violated, then he has a right to go and directly approach the Supreme Court in order to get back his fundamental rights. So this is a basic difference between the ordinary rights as well as the fundamental rights. I hope this is clear now. Now moving to right against exploitation, which is the third fundamental right of the Indian Constitution and is also very important to save the weak and underprivileged people or the class from being exploited. Generally, this right against exploitation is given in Articles 23 and 24, according to which: Number 1. The Constitution aims in abolishing the trafficking in human beings as well as begar. Now, the term trafficking in human beings means the selling of the human beings in the market in order to treat them as slaves. And begar was earlier being practiced in our country, which means forced labor, where a person is forced to do the work but is not given proper payment or hardly any payment. Secondly, the Article 24 also aims at abolishing of employment of children below the age of 14 years in dangerous jobs like factories, mines, etc. Generally, we see that some of the family members who are very poor and are not able to meet with the basic needs of the family, they send the young children in order to work in the factories and all. Now, the factory owners are very much happy to have these children to work for them because number one, they don't have to pay a higher amount of salary to them. Second, as these are young children, so they are hyperactive, so they do a lot of work as compared to the elder ones. So this is the reason why factory owners are much more keen in order to employ the children below 14 years in order to work in their factories or mines. But this Article 24 totally abolishes and goes against the exploitation of children who are working under 14 years in any kind of dangerous jobs like factories, mines, etc. Besides this, it also provides children the right to education as their fundamental right. Coming to right to freedom of religion, which is provided by Article 25 to 28, it aims at freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion. Again, it means that every citizen of the country has a freedom to visit any place of worship or practice any religion and right to propagate one's own religion according to his or her own will. The Constitution guarantees equality to all the religions. India does not have any official religion of its own, and that is why we practice secularism, where there is no official religion but all the religions are equal. Besides this, it also gives a freedom to pay taxes for promotion of any particular religion, as well as to attend religious instructions or worships in certain educational institutions. Next is a cultural and educational right, which is the fifth fundamental right and is also important for the survival of democracy. This right protects the minorities in a country, as India is a vast country which is rich in diversities in terms of culture, religion, and language. This right protects the religious, cultural, and linguistic minorities. Minorities actually are the groups that have common language or religion, and in a part of the country or the entire country, they are outnumbered by the other social group. That means they are very, very less as compared to the majorities. So these minorities can set up their educational institutes to preserve and develop their own culture. The government does not discriminate, as well as promote them by granting aid to these educational institutions. So in this way, the cultural and educational rights have been practiced in our country. Last but not the least comes the right to constitutional remedies, which is given to us by Article 32. Now, Dr. Ambedkar considered the right to constitutional remedies as the heart and soul of the Constitution. The reason is because this right gives a citizen the right to approach a high court or Supreme Court to get any kind of fundamental rights restored in case of the violation. Which means, like for example, if any of my 5 fundamental rights have been taken, then I can make use of this 6th fundamental right, approach to the High Court or Supreme Court and get my right back. The Supreme Court and the High Court can issue orders and give directives to the government for the enforcement of this right. Now, the Supreme Court and High Court can issue various special orders and give directives to the government for enforcement of the rights. And these special orders are known as writs. Basically, there are 5 writs. The first one is habeas corpus. According to this, the court orders that arrested person should be presented before the court within 24 hours of his arrest. It can also order to set free an arrested person if the arrest is unlawful. So for example, if I have been arrested, then according to habeas corpus, I have to be presented before the court within 24 hours of my arrest. And if in case my arrest is unlawful, then even the court can free me from that particular arrest. Second is mandamus. It orders when a particular office is not doing legal duty and is violating the right of an individual. So, if in case any individual whose right has been violated by any of the governmental office, then the person can again approach the court, and then according to this mandamus, that particular office is being legally ordered by the court in order to give back the right to that particular person. Next comes prohibition, which is issued by higher court, that is, it could be the High Court or the Supreme Court, when a lower court has considered a case going beyond its jurisdiction. So, for example, if there is any case in the session court, and if the session court feels that the case is going beyond its jurisdiction, then this can be utilized. Next is quo warranto. According to this, if the court finds that the person is holding office but is not entitled to hold that office, it issues a writ of quo warranto and restricts that person from acting as an office holder. Which means that, for example, there is a person who is having any kind of, you can say, business or any kind of post, but actually he does not deserve it, then in that case quo warranto can be issued against that particular person. And last one is certiorari, according to which the court orders a lower court or another authority to transfer a matter pending before it to the higher authority or the court. That means if in case there is any case going on in the session court and the High Court or the Supreme Court feels that that particular court, lower court, is not able to solve that case, then the court can be asked to pass that particular case to the higher court or to the Supreme Court so that the justice can be done at a particular time. So, these were the 6 basic fundamental rights that we have covered so far in our video number 1, 2 as well as this one, that is the third one. Coming next is the National Human Rights Commission, that is NHRC, which functions include inquiry at its own initiative or a petition presented to it by a victim into complaint of violation of human rights. Which means that if in case a person who is a victim goes and complains in NHRC that some of his human rights have been violated, then this particular organization does an inquiry and gives back the right to that particular person. Not only this, NHRC also visits the jails to study the condition of the people living over there from time to time. It also undertakes and promotes the research work in the field of human rights. It does not have the power of prosecution, but it can merely make some kind of recommendation to the government or to the courts to initiate the proceedings that are based on inquiry that is conducted. So, in this manner, the NHRC, that is National Human Rights Commission, basically work. And this is this NHRC which is nowadays becoming a strong backbone for all the citizens of our country. Coming to the directive principles of the state policy, we see that post-independence, the challenge before the country was to bring equality and well-being of all its citizens. But at the same time, we did not have enough resources to put everything under fundamental rights category. Even our constitution makers did not want to burden the policy makers where every citizen will be going to the court for asking for their rights. So, they came out with some guidelines, that is, directive principles of state policies. These guidelines are non-justiciable. It means that if the government does not bring these principles into action, the citizens cannot go to court for asking of its implementation as what they can do in case of fundamental rights. Now, these directive principles of the state policy list mainly the 3 things. Number 1, the goals and objectives that we as the society should adopt. Secondly, certain rights that individuals should enjoy apart from the fundamental rights. And third, certain policies that the government should adopt. To ensure the directive principles, several measures have been taken, like for example the abolition of zamindari system, nationalizing of the banks, having minimum wages for the laborers, cottage and small scale industries were promoted. It also included the right to education, spreading of Panchayati Raj system, and launching of the midday meal scheme. Now, let's see what's the relationship between the fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy. See, the fundamental rights restrains the government from doing certain things, but directive principles exhorts the government to do certain things. Fundamental rights on one hand mainly protect the rights of the individuals, whereas directive principle ensures the well-being of the entire society. Finally, coming to the fundamental duties, in 1976, the 42nd Amendment of the Constitution was passed. According to this amendment, 10 fundamental duties have been included in the constitutions which are not enforceable on all the citizens. As citizens, we must abide the constitution, defend our country when in need, and promote harmony amongst all the citizens and protect our environment. But here a citizen cannot be punished if he or she is not following the fundamental duties. Let's see what are those basic 10 fundamental duties that have been provided to us. The first is to abide by the constitution and respect the ideals and the institutions. Secondly, to respect the national flag and the national anthem. Third, to realize and follow the essential ideals of secularism, democracy, and non-violence. Fourth, to preserve the culture and heritage of the country. Fifth, to protect the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of the nation. Sixth, to safeguard the public property. Seventh, to defend the country even at the cost of our life. Eighth, to protect the natural resources and to promote sustainable development. Ninth, to avoid dowry, gambling, and any other kind of social evils. This might even include sati and the practice of untouchability. And the last one is to strive towards excellence in the respective spheres of activities of the individuals. So these are the 10 fundamental duties that every citizen of the country has to abide for. The last one is the right to property. In the constitution originally there was a fundamental right to acquire, possess and maintain the property. But the constitution made it clear that property could be taken away by the government for public welfare. That is why in 1973 the Supreme Court gave a decision that the right to property was not to be a part of the basic structure of the constitution, and therefore the parliament had power to remove this right. Finally, in 1978, by the 44th Amendment to the Constitution, removed the right to property from the list of fundamental rights. Otherwise, earlier we were having this as one of our 7th fundamental right and converted into a simple legal right under Article 300A. So now, right to property is not a fundamental right, but it is an ordinary right given to the citizen of a country. So in this way, we come to the end of our chapter. I hope you were able to understand the concepts clearly. Still, if there is any query, feel free to contact and also go through your NCERT textbook for the further details. I am also providing you a link of the notes which will help you to understand the concept better. Keep learning, keep growing. Thank you. Take care.